anybody that follows Israeli politics follows you. You were once the darling girl of the Likud. And people talked about you becoming the head of the party one day. People talked about you being the future of the party for like a good 5 years. I have to ask, what happened? Hi, welcome to Wine with Adam. I'm your host, Adam Scott Bellos, and today we are here in Jerusalem, filming in the Knesset with my very good friend and very special guest and favorite member of the opposition, Sharren Haskel.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm fantastic. The first thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna taste a little wine. So today's wine that we're gonna be drinking is from the Jezreel Valley Winery. It's the 2020 Nahalal. It's made from Shiraz and Carignan grapes. The whole thing with the Jezreel Valley Winery is that they wanted to create a wine that would be like bottling modern Israel. And they actually make the most awarded wine in Israeli wine today, believe it or not. This is a very good bottle. It's one of my favorite Israeli wines. And tell me what you taste, what you smell, if you like it, if you don't like it. Chaim.
Cheers, l'chaim.
What do we think?
It's good.
It's good. L'chaim. Oh my God, I'm
L'chaim.
so happy to get to spend this time with you because you are such a unique individual in the Israeli political landscape. So let me introduce you to our viewers today. Sharren, you're a mother of three. You're a certified veterinarian nurse. You were once the youngest serving member in the coalition when you were a member of Likud. You've been in the Knesset since 2015, if I'm correct.
Mm-hmm.
You're now a member of Tikva Hadasha, or the national camp, so to speak.
It's a national camp. We ran in two different lists that were united into one party.
Okay. I want to know where all of it comes from, okay? Because very few people grow up to be members of parliament, let alone achieve kind of what you achieved at such a young age. It's a rare thing. Like, what was it like to grow up with the family that you grew up with?
The person that set an example for me was my grandmother. I was extremely attached to her. She was such a unique person who survived so many things. And she was a great woman. She was a great woman who escaped to Germany, who her family members, died, murdered, who find a way to save her family and hide. A great woman who came here to the country to fight with a palmach and be a warrior woman, I grew up in a very Zionist, loving the country home. My parents are very not political, and I sort of grew up in a mishmash because my father was born here in Israel. He's a Saba, and my mother is a Moroccan French Jew.
Oh, that's where your fire comes from. Now I get it. Okay.
And so she moved to Israel as an Ola Chadasha.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I grew up as a Saba and as a newcomer, as a secular from my father's side, and as a traditional from my mother's side, a religious traditional.
So you're just a real Jewish mutt.
From a Mizrahi and Ashkenazi.
Yeah, you're
It's like, it's such
best of both worlds.
Absolutely, and I got so much out of it. And I think that's really gave me a lot of independence, a lot of security, self-confidence.
When you were younger, you joined the border police. And I've heard you talk about how physically challenging
it's the border
it was.
guards.
The border guards.
Yeah.
And you talked about how physically challenging it was and how it prepared you mentally. And you now just gave birth to twins. And like, I'm actually very interested, and I think other people would be very interested. How did the Army prepare you for motherhood?
I mean, if you ask me what I am today a mother before everything else. They are my little cheeks, and I guard them with all my force and all my might. And I think it gives me much more strength to fight here in the Knesset, because I know I'm not just fighting for me, for my generation, for my people. I'm literally fighting for my children here, for them to have a better future in my country. And how did the army prepare me better? In every single way. Mentally, I understand my capability. I'm pushing myself to the limit. I know physically I'm capable of everything. Nothing can stop me. And being a mother and in a full-time position here in the Knesset, I didn't find the perfect balance yet, and maybe it will never come. But I am both of these things. I understand I am a mother before everything, but I'm also a leader of my country and my people. I mean, I still remember the first time I entered the Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee, and I was 8 years younger now. And all these generals see this young woman walking in, and I can see their looking, oh, who is this person? And I can see their attitude, sort of, oh, she's going to sit next to all these assistants. And I take my seat on the table, and they're like, I can hear them sort of whispering, who this person is. And they say, oh, it's a Knesset member, and she sits in the Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee. But slowly I've proven myself there as well, and I got the respect from them as well.
You're kind of known as this fighter, so to speak. I mean, you one time you said to me that you're very ideological, and that's not necessarily the best thing for a member of the Knesset. And I wanted to know, what's been the hardest thing for you as an ideologue?
Wow. It's when I see the cynical actions of some Knesset members, when they know that finally there's a historic moment and we can make a huge change for the better of Israelis, and they just blow it, just for the spite of it, just for the, the camps, it really, I take it really, really hard emotionally. And that's why, it's difficult for me a little bit more maybe to make some friends here in the Knesset.
Interesting. Give me an example of something that hit you hard.
So I was working for almost a year on a specific legislation about medical cannabis. There's a massive problem with people that are not receiving their medicine. People are literally dying because of that. There's children with epilepsy. That's the only medicine they have.
They have to go through 5 different medications before they're prescribed.
Yeah, and we had a legislation in. And the opposition decided to vote against it, even though they promised their electorate they're going to vote in favor of it. But it was the Likud who, one member after another, voted against it. And I took it very, very hard, because I know people right now are dying because of that.
It kind of skyrocketed you to this cultural icon, so to speak, because you represented the future Likud in a way. A social liberal, a fiscal conservative, and somebody who's a right-wing hawk when it comes to security. And I know something that you don't really talk about that much that's very important to you, that I think comes from your Likud roots. And obviously I want to get into why you left Likud and what happened. But to me, one of the most interesting things that you're working on right now, and I know you recently submitted a bill, it was sovereignty over the Jordan Valley. And I know that sovereignty is something that's very important to you, and it's one of the biggest disagreements I believe you have with Netanyahu right now. What can you tell me about, what do maybe non-Israelis misunderstand about politicians working towards extending sovereignty in different regions of Israel?
I think this is a core argument that I have with him for 7 years now.
Okay.
Because ever since I entered the Knesset, I wrote this bill on how we should apply sovereignty over the Jordan Valley in Israel to set an example of how Israel should look in maybe 50, 60 years. There's been many, call it experiments in Israel on how to resolve the conflict between the Jews and the Arabs. We've been forced and pushed by the international community a few times to give up territory because they think This conflict is territorial. And every time we've applied a territorial solution to this conflict, we lost. We lost lives. Not just territory, but the lives of our people, of members of our family, of good friends. It happens in Oslo, okay, when they promised us that if we only give a sort of a sovereignty to the Palestinians, then the extremes will have no reason to fight us. But the Oslo Accord brought the terrorists into our homes and into our cities in Tel Aviv and Haifa and Ra'anana and Kfar Saba. And that's take me to another territorial solutions that we were pushed on through Gaza. You know, the territorial solution in Gaza said, oh, if we only give them that land and this autonomy, then everything would be fine, right? We had to evacuate every single Jew from that land. We even had to take the dead from their graves and bury them in Israel. And what happened next? We get missiles to Tel Aviv, to Jerusalem, to Haifa. Those experiments have proven, some in Europe don't want to believe it yet, but the Palestinians saying it out loud. They want from the river to the sea Palestine to be free. Free of what? Free of Jews. Okay? So those territorial solutions were only a step towards a greater solution in their eye. Territorial solutions are not the solution for our conflict. But then there was another solution that was tried by Begin. They applied sovereignty over the Golan Heights. You know, we still have Druze members and Arab members of our society. They can ask for an Israeli citizenship if they want. Some of them don't want, some of them do. They get healthcare, school system, everything, and they live like any other Israeli citizen. You know what? It's not perfect, but it works. And so if we understand that when we bring those values of democracy, equality, liberties to that culture that it's still relatively new to it, it can work. And that's what I want the world to see in the Jordan Valley. And that's why I've been fighting for it ever since I've entered the Knesset. And then about, I think it was now 2-3 years ago, after I've been trying to push it for a few years, the Netanyahu one's election promises was to apply sovereignty over the Jordan Valley. I was so happy and excited about it. I said, okay, this is the moment. Now, finally, the Likud will prove that we can actually do that, and we're going to do that, and that's going to change our history. That's going to change, you know, Israelis' lives and the future, and how. And then came the day that he said, and it continued to pass, and on, and every time I would bring a question to raise the law.
It was the trade-off, though, for the Abraham Accords.
Apparently, later on, yes. Unfortunately.
What would you rather choose, sovereignty over the Jordan Valley or the Abraham Accords?
I do not think eventually that it would have changed that much, the Abraham Accord. That would have come because the Arab world is looking on what's happening in Israel. And when they see a strong nation who's decisive about its future and say clearly, we're not going anywhere, we're here to stay. And if we would have done that, and they would have seen that that's not the end of history, and that maybe some Palestinians can live side by side with the Jewish people, I think it would have been an amazing calling to the Arab world as well.
One of the things that Jared Kushner, who you have a picture with on your wall, writes about in his book is that the main thing that every single Arab leader spoke about with him was it wasn't about the Palestinians, it wasn't about sovereignty or annexation, it was about access to the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and that everything comes down to the Arab world for access to the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And I know that the Temple Mount is like a very special place for you. And if I'm correct, you like to go up there every once in a while, which is not, I mean, if you look at the typical propaganda that displays Israeli settlers storming the Temple Mount, you do not fit that description at all. I mean, you're a Chiluni from Kfar Saba. Yeah. So, you know, what does that mean to you? Because it seems like more and more Israelis want to be able to go up there peacefully.
Absolutely, and they should. They should be freedom of religion, definitely in Jerusalem. I mean, the Temple Mount is the center of history for the Jewish people. This is where the most holy place, is set for the Jewish people. Okay, the history that was there. It's part of our culture. It is part of our identity, and more so, you just
how do you have sovereignty in Jerusalem without sovereignty over what makes Jerusalem? I guess you could say.
Absolutely, and for me, this place is a piece of my history, of my culture, of my identity. And I believe that the more Arab leaders come and see what Palestinians are doing there, how they are desecrating this holy site, the more they'll be willing to come and understand not only if Jews hold it and have it open freely for all the religions, for Muslims, for Christians, for Jews, only then this place will be really holy and upheld as it should.
This is the problem, is that none of the parties actually represent the majority of the country. But I assume that most people in the country are middle grounded. They are spiritual, but not necessarily ultra-Orthodox. They do want sovereignty, but they also want peace.
They're not extreme.
Right. Like the majority of Israelis are not extreme. They're moving more to the right, but not in terms of extremism, in terms of safety, in terms of security, maybe.
I think that the people of Israel, after 3 years of political craziness, living in complete political propaganda, think about it, elections after elections, elections. This is slogans, propaganda, hatred, division.
Do you ever get tired of it?
Of course. I think the Israeli public is tired of it as well.
I know that anybody that follows Israeli politics follows you. You were once the darling girl of the Likud. And people talked about you becoming the head of the party one day. People talked about you being the future of the party for like a good 5 years. I have to ask, what happened?
It was very, very difficult for me. It was a very, very difficult decision that came in a few, chapters. So the first thing is that I was disappointed from Netanyahu. And I was disappointed because I saw him as this great leader. And from what I understand, and looking through history as well, great leaders need also to understand and know when it's time to say, okay, I've done my mission. I need to pass the torch to the next one and prepare someone else. So the first thing, he's never prepared a leader to inherit him from the right camp side. But I didn't realize that until we got into this political crisis. Because I think great thing of the things that he's done for our country and for our people. But because of the way he does politics, he created a distrust between many, many party leaders, and he wasn't able to build bridges anymore to promote the right side of the map. And that started putting some question marks in my mind, whether we're looking on the future of our country and of our people, what's best for them, or what's best for him. And then he wouldn't fulfill his promise to his partner. And that showed up another pattern of his politics on how to burn bridges with partners that he would be able to collaborate with. Even though I didn't like those partners. You cannot continuously lie to them because you're burning all bridges. And so I understood that the future of the right cannot be held anymore with Netanyahu. And that was time for him to say.
Netanyahu or Likud?
Netanyahu. Because anyone else from Likud that would have stepped up would have been able to form a coalition. Anyone else. And then came the challenge over the head of the party. Mm-hmm. And I believed...
was big.
Yeah. And when Gideon Sa'ar said he's going to challenge Netanyahu, I put aside everything and I said, okay, what is the future of the right? What is the future of the Likud? And it can only be with someone else. and no one else challenged Netanyahu. And I said, okay, Gideon is a good person. He can inherit it. He has a lot of experience. His interests are first the best of our country and of our people. This is someone I need to support. And even any kind of political logic, any kind of, Ken?
We need to go to the Melia. We have voting.
Okay.
Okay,
So
you have to vote.
I have to go and vote. And
We'll be
continue
right
that
back. Yeah.
afterwards? Yeah, okay.
You have to have a drink before you go vote,
Yeah.
for sure.
Okay.
I guess we'll be right back while Sharren goes to vote,
Yeah.
and I continue to drink alone. Okay, here we go.
Enjoy the bottle. I'll be right
I'll
back.
see you in a few minutes.
Okay.
Do your thing.
שרן השכל, בעד. ניסים ואטורי, נגד.
When you say that you thought he was the right person, did you actually think that he would win? Because Bibi's never
No.
won. I mean,
No.
Bibi's never lost a primary.
Yeah, I knew there's a very small chance that we would win. I knew it's like usually would be a lost battle, but understanding the political reality of what's right for the country, the right thing to do is to stop this chaos of elections after elections, is to set a right-wing sort of sector and to win these elections, because the Likud could still win those elections. And so my decision was to try and persuade as many people as possible that Netanyahu was a good leader, but it is time for the right to take charge again and to lead the country into new reform that were needed.
Most people would call what you did political suicide, and it wasn't for you.
Yeah, but I guess a person that's not scared of his seat and someone who's really looking only on one thing, what's better for my country and what's the right thing to do for my people. I'll fight for this position with all my power. I'll try and persuade as many people as I can that I'm the right person to represent them, because I truly believe that. But if that come to then, that's not the end of my world. I know I did my best. I know I've sacrificed so much in order to do that, to do the right thing.
It didn't end up being a suicide mission, though.
Yeah.
I mean, you ended up starting a new party with Gideon. I want to know what it was like to meet face-to-face with your party leader, who was the sitting prime minister at the time, and to tell him that you weren't going to back him for premier, like the head of the party, because no one says no to Netanyahu. What was that conversation like?
So because I have so much respect for him, I wouldn't have done that just an announcement behind his back. It was very important for me to say that and to have this discussion and tell that to him face to face. It wasn't easy because I think he was a great leader of our country. But I also think that a great quality in a leader is to know when to step down. Okay, when to place someone else who can push the vision that he have for our country and for our people. And I don't think he's capable of doing that.
I'm going to ask you something that I ask every guest. And it's the final question that I ask all my guests. I'm getting ready to become a bar mitzvah. If you could teach me everything that you have learned, but in one sentence, what would that be?
I would tell them, never listen when your surrounding is telling you you cannot do something. Because you are the only person who knows truly in your heart what you're capable and where you want to be in 10, 20 years. You may not be able to describe it or say it out loud, but you can really feel it in your heart. You're the only one that would truly know where you need to end up, and that is to follow your destiny.
In short, follow your destiny.
Yeah.
L'chaim. It was such a pleasure.
L'chaim.
This is Wine with Adam with my very special guest, Sharren Haskel. If you like the bottle of wine that we're drinking, the 2020 Nahalal Jezreel, you can get it at wineonthevine.com. If you want to plant a vine at the Jezreel Valley Winery, go to wineonthevine.org/JNS. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button below. And remember, most importantly, when you drink your Israeli wine, drink it with somebody you love. L'chaim.
L'chaim.
So much